Greetings, comrades, and welcome to How the Red Was Won, a podcast about organizing in the South, Texas fascism, and how to fight back. I'm your host, Jen Big Nasty, and before we get started with today's interview, I would just like to remind you that if you like this project and you are able to support it financially, please find my Patreon. I have many tiers starting at just $2.50 a month, and that comes with early release episodes as well as a monthly Patreon-only episode just for you for subscribing. So if you're able to, please financially support this project. It really means a lot, and it helps me be able to continue to do this. So today I have an interview that I am so excited to share with you. I am talking to Leroy F Moore Jr. He is a writer, a poet, and an activist who has cerebral palsy. He is the founder of Krip-Hop Nation, the co-founder of Sins Invalid, a former member of National Black Disability Coalition, and a writer for Poor magazine. His art and activism center the Black disability experience, and his movement, Krip-Hop Nation, continues to highlight and amplify disabled artists and their music. And so without further ado, welcome Leroy F Moore Jr. to the podcast. Hello, Leroy. Thank you for being here.
I follow your stuff on YouTube, so excellent work.
Oh, thank you so much. I follow your stuff too. It's wonderful. So before we really jump into what it is that you do, I wanted to just get a little background on you, like where you grew up, what that was like for you, as well as you're still continuing your education and you're currently working on your doctorate. And I wanted to hear a little bit about that as well.
All right. So I was born in the coldest place on earth. It's not the North Pole, it's Buffalo, New York. Back I was born in 67. So the 70s, it was just blizzard after blizzard. Grew up in New York City. So I saw hip hop on the corner before hip hop became bling bling. And I grew up in New York City and in Connecticut. And I moved to California back in 91. So I moved to the Bay Area in 91, saw the dot-com boom, got politically involved. I've always been an activist. My father was associated with the Black Panther Party, so always an activist. My mom was an activist for me, being Black and disabled. She got me services, got me out of special education to quote-unquote mainstream education, got me into nonprofits. I blame her that I started my own nonprofit back in the 90s. I got sick of writing grants. So I dropped that after like 6 years. It was a nonprofit for people of color with disabilities. Because I grew up in nonprofits. My dad was in nonprofits. I grew up in nonprofits, and after undergrad, I went to the UK, and that's when I found a Black disabled movement. So I came back home, quit my job, and I started my own nonprofit. So that lasted for 5 years. Then me and a friend of mine that passed away a couple years ago, Patty Byrne, started Sins Invalid. And Sins Invalid is a performance group and also an activist group for people of color, people that are queer. And Patty and a group of us started what's called Disability Justice. And disability justice is not disability rights. People get that mixed up a lot. But it's really people of color, people that are queer, people that were not quote unquote included in the disability rights movement. So we started disability justice. And during that time, I also started what's called Krip-Hop Nation, and we've done a lot of work internationally. We won an Emmy a couple years ago around Rising Phoenix. It was a documentary of the Paralympics, which I was an athlete back in the 80s.
What sport?
Yeah, my life is a circle.
You've done so much. Yeah, what sport did you do in the
Oh,
Paralympics?
cycling.
Cycling. Amazing.
Cycling. So yeah, because of my work with Krip-Hop, UCLA came knocking on my door and they said, Leroy, you need to get a PhD. And it was a great time because I was suing my landlord because of so much things.
Mm-hmm.
The elevator was broke for like a month and it was just out of control. So it came just in the nick of time. So I've been here at UCLA for 5 years and going into my last year of funding, which is kind of scary,
Mm-hmm.
for my PhD. And my PhD is really coming out with a hip-hop theory and also cripping Black radical thinkers like Cedric Robertson and Sylvia Winters. Yeah, crippling Black radical thinkers because I think that nobody has done that for people with disabilities, especially in the Black radical tradition. I know women, Black women, did their part in it. Black gays and lesbians and transgenders, queered it, but no black disabled people have tried to crip it.
Mm.
So that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Will you define what you mean when you say cripping?
So cripping with a K, it's a long story, but we got time. So cripping, it's interesting because another thing that I skipped over my history is long, but I used to write prisoners. So I used to write disabled prisoners, and I got in contact. I was involved with Freedom Archives. Freedom Archives kicked butt, and I had a chance to write Tookie Williams before the state killed him. And Tookie Williams wrote back to me. I asked him a couple questions about the term Crip because when Crip Hop started, everybody's like, "Oh, it's a gang," you can't take that because that's the Crips and the Bloods. And so Tookie Williams told me, and this is coming from a letter from Tookie Williams. He said, "Leroy, we had a disabled member, so he called him Crip, for cripple." So I took that and I ran with it. I was like, okay, Crip Hop, and of course, like hip hop, you change, something for a positive thing. So I changed the C to the K. So yeah, Krip-Hop Nation. So
Very
we've
cool.
been doing Krip-Hop Nation for almost 25 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's just, I'm getting old, as you can see.
We are all getting older. That's great. Yeah, you've lived such a full life, and you're not even old yet. So much more to come. Very exciting. Um, Okay, let's get into Krip-Hop Nation, the organization itself. I have several different subtopics of this that we can kind of jump through. It does not have to go in any sort of order, but it does start with this idea of ethnomusicology.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a definition of it as examination of music as a social process used to navigate and challenge marginalization.
yeah, yeah, and that's true. We're taking ethnology and quipping it and saying that, there's music history of people with disabilities. You can go back to the blues, and the blues just did a video a couple of days ago talking about the history of black disabled entertainers from the minstrel shows to freak shows to the blues. And most of them were black and brown disabled people. So the minstrel shows is a really wonderful story. Is that this white Jewish guy was traveling somewhere down south, and he saw an elder disabled man dancing in his neighborhood, and he said, "Oh, can you show me those dance? Teach me those dance, and I'll give you some money." And that person was Jim Crow, the
The
real
Jim
person.
Crow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the real person. People don't talk about the real person. People just
People
talk
forget
about
that he was a real person. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And the real person was a black disabled man.
Hmm.
So the real person showed him the dance move, gave him his clothes, and he went back down south and discovered minstrel shows. So I take that as saying that Jim Crow was, the bones and, of course, all the blind blues artists are the bones, and then freak shows and all that stuff were the bones of entertainment, in the industry that we live under today.
Hmm.
But really, it started with a lot of disabled artists, from freak shows to minstrel shows to the circus to all that.
Hmm.
George Washington, our first president, his housemaid was a black, blind, disabled women, and being George Washington, he put her in the first. I think it's one of the first freak shows in, I think, Philadelphia. So that's coming from our first president. So, you know, yeah.
And from what I understand, those were pretty much the only way that disabled people could
Exactly.
pay their bills, could get any sort of employment at the time. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's why we don't talk about it that much because
Hmm.
it's like a chore. But it's really, like you said, it's the only way that disabled people could, yeah, get money. And a
Hmm.
lot of a lot of those artists became wealthy. There's this book called Christine and Millie and Christine was a part of the freak show, and they came back and bought the plantation that they grew up in. So,
That's amazing.
it's a trip,
Wow. Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. That's a great story.
Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I met their nephew, like great nephew, and he's a singer, and I think he's from Germany or somewhere in Europe, black guy, and he did a whole play about his ancestors because he found out that Millie and Christy was his relative. So he did a whole performance program about those two because those two was Siamese twins.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So,
Wow. Wow. Okay. So I have some excerpts from your blog on the Krip-Hop Nation website, and I will definitely link all of that stuff in the show notes so that people can read it themselves.
yeah.
Um, but I wanted to read this quote from the idea of Krip-Hop theory concepts.
Yeah.
Krip-Hop theory centers on disabled black artists using hip-hop to challenge ableism, racism, mainstream narratives, claiming disabled identity by embracing terms like Crip, demanding liberation rather than mere inclusion, and connecting with black disabled ancestors for political education, cultural expression, and radical transformation, advocating for disability justice and disrupting societal quote unquote identity thinking through music, art, and activism.
Yes.
That is quite an ambitious goal for sure.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit about how you take that ambitious goal, that theory of Crip Hop, and how that is applied into the community, into actual work with people on the ground?
Yeah. That is so interesting. Yeah, that's a part of my PhD is really coming out with a theory. And also, not only a theory, because, theories live in academia, but also the second part of it is to build a hip hop institute in the community where families, loved ones, people, little Lisa, little Leroy's, that have a disability can go and, research about their ancestors, make music, make paintings and all that. There's not a place in the U.S. that does that. I like I said, I grew up in New York. I used to go to the Schomburg. Everybody know what the Schomburg, Black Research Library, and James Baldwin's ashes is under the Schomburg. And I used to tell my mom, I was like, one day I'm gonna get into the Schomburg and do a Black disabled event. But there's no place like the Schomburg for Black disabled people, so they can not only research their information but get political education on top of it. So that's what hopefully is going to come out. After I get done with this PhD, is the second phase of building that, so we can go to a place and get the theories that I'm talking about, because we have to know that only 2% of Black and brown disabled people make it to graduate school.
Just 2%.
2%.
Wow.
Isn't that disgusting?
That's
So, although we have, Black studies, women's studies, disability studies, most of that is not going to touch, my community.
right. It's just not
So,
accessible to people
yeah,
if we're not. Yeah, we're gatekeeping these things from
yeah,
people. Yeah.
exactly. So there needs to be a spot. So that's my ultimate goal. Versus this dissertation, quipping Black radical thinkers and coming out with a hip hop theory. But after that, really building up the hip hop institute. And it's going to be hopefully here in the U.S. and also in Africa, because our Africa chapters are just kicking butt. I think I'm gonna be like James Baldwin. I'm gonna end up living, you know, in a different country. Like W.E.B. Du Bois. He's in his life. He's like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm going to Ghana. I think I'm on that wavelength, because It's hard to say, but the U.S. the U.S. The U.S. don't treasure black radical thinkers. They don't.
Never has. Right.
Never
Right.
have. So I'm a part of that. So and also I have seen my work decrease in the U.S. and get more popular outside the U.S. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, the U.S. has a history of murdering black radicals
Yeah.
for daring to speak out against their own oppression. So, be safe
Uh,
with the work that you do. I want to talk a little more about the Africa work. You mentioned. Yeah, setting up an institution there as well. But I also wanted to talk about the UN Treaty on Disability that you mentioned when we were texting earlier this week.
yeah, it's interesting. So these trees, the oh god, I could talk forever. But these trees are they have no teeth.
Mm-hmm.
It's good that countries sign it. So the UN Treaty on Disability, on title, I think it's title 13 or title 31. I get those numbers mixed up. But that title deals with entertainment, um, music, recreation, saying that, people with disabilities need to be involved in, entertainment and all that stuff. So I'm using that. I'm playing, UN, we're doing the work on the ground. These trees, the thing about these trees is that a lot of countries sign it, but they know that they can't enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's almost like a joke
Right.
because they know they can't enforce it.
Or
Here in the,
won't enforce it.
in the U.S., the treaty on disability is not signed because both parties think that the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, is stronger than the UN treaty, so they don't need to sign it.
Oh, the U.S. hasn't even signed the UN
Oh
Treaty on
no,
Disability?
no.
That's embarrassing. Wow.
Yeah, isn't it? Isn't
Yeah.
it? It's just,
Shameful,
oh.
yeah.
So it's interesting how these trees are made, and how these trees are really not enforced. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I think it was even last year, came to me and they were playing this awareness event, disability awareness event, and of course I interrupted them. I was like, well, what does the awareness event do for people on the ground? Because I'm 58 years old. I don't need no awareness.
Right.
I need some, on the ground, real thing.
Justice, yeah.
Yeah. So they said, oh no, Leroy, we're doing work, blah, blah, blah. So, we started talking, and I showed them my contract. And they said, oh, we can't afford your fee. And this is the UN. I was like, you can't afford my fee? It's just interesting because, Krip-Hop has done international work since the beginning. We raised funds for a single father that had two daughters that needed wheelchairs. So we did that first. Then the father came back and his daughter came back and daughter's like, I love Krip-Hop, but I want to go to school like Krip-Hop and be an activist like Leroy. So we got back on the wagon and raised funds for 2 years of her education. And we reached out to the World Bank saying, okay, the World Bank, we did this, we got on wheelchairs, we did the first 2 years of school, blah, blah, blah. Can you help? And, yeah, help us. And they said that we don't do that kind of work.
Oh.
I was like, you're the freaking World Bank. I was like, are you serious?
Yeah, we don't help people though. Yeah.
I'm
Wow.
like, yeah, here I am on SSI, you know, undergrad, and no, the graduate student doing all this work, and you can't, and you're the World Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be on my tomb when I pass away. The World Bank and the UN turned down Krip-Hop.
Wear it like a badge of honor. So the thing I am most excited to talk to you about, and it's something that you have written extensively about in your blog and in your poetry, is the decolonial theory that goes along with this idea of Krip-Hop. And I wanted to read another quote from your blog. A decolonizing white Western disability process is a critical framework aimed at dismantling the ableist colonialist structures embedded in Western Eurocentric models of disability, which often focus on individualism, productivity, and medicalization. It is a deliberate effort to shift away from treating disability as an individual deficit or pathology toward recognizing it as a social, cultural, and political construct that interacts with colonialism, racism, and capitalism.
Yes.
And that is such a powerful statement right there. And I think a lot of people, when we talk about decolonizing, we think of it as land back, right? And I think that is an important thing that people should be talking about.
Yeah.
But you're talking more about like decolonizing the mind, right? And the way that we interact with our own disabilities and with other people in society. And I wanted to really get into that because I'm fascinated by this, and I think it is a brilliant way to look at this.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because, well, especially now, we are in this, and I don't understand it, but in this inclusionary movement, especially people with disabilities. And I see that as an insult to our disabled ancestors that have done so much work, so much work. So, and I also see, you know, going back to Sins Invalid with Patty Byrne, the late Patty Byrne, the late Stacey Milburn, when we started disability justice, it was, it was for the community. Although now it's like everywhere, it's the Ford Foundation. It's the weirdest thing to say to be alive and to see that it's something that you help build is in like everywhere except the black and brown community, which is it's just it's shocking. Well, was last year. I went out. I shut down my computer, shut down my phone. I went to two communities of color here in LA, East LA and another neighborhood. I asked people, do you know about disability justice? Do you know about the Americans with Disability Act? Do you know about, Sins Invalid? And only two people. I think I asked like about 75 people.
Wow.
I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? So, after seeing that, and after reading, of course, Frantz Fanon, and Frantz Fanon warned us about this identity trap, and asking our oppressors to see us, it makes no freaking sense. So I realized it's like we have to go back, especially from the Black community, and do some decolonizing work, because unfortunately, in the Black community, um, we still had the slave masters thinking around disability. It's like, okay, hush hush, I'll keep it at home, or you just get services and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And, other communities, the white community, went on to, you know, display rights, display culture, and all that stuff. And we're still back in this healing kind of stuff. So after seeing that, it's like, Frantz Fanon is right. They need to decolonize our minds so we can get out of this this mindset around disability, and Black disabled people can come home and do some organizing, because right now Black disabled people can't come home. All of our national organizations, the NAACP, Urban League, all of them. I wrote to all of them when I was a teenager, in the freaking 80s and 70s about this, and they all go back and they're like, oh, there's nothing out there, and that was in the 80s. So it's 2026, and like, no wonder there's only one national Black disability organization. So that's what needs to be done. I don't think it's hard to say, but it's very sad to say that I don't think I'm going to see it in my lifetime, because this generation is so hooked on hashtag activism. And I was like, what the fuck is that? I don't know. I guess I'm too old, but I like, what?
Well, it's
So
easy, right? It's so easy just to hashtag something and then you think that you've done your part, right? Like I think,
no.
yeah, I think a lot of us fall into that trap.
And it's not only that, I think there's a book on it. There's an academic book on. I was like, what the hell is this? So decolonizing is, going back and really doing the work. Bringing up, Sankofa, the word Sankofa from Ghana. It's going back, before colonization, and really, picking out our stories and coming forward and doing the work. Kwame Nkrumah, he had one of the first rehabilitation programs for people with disabilities. He saw people with disabilities as equal partners. This is way before the U.S. So I think that we need to do that in the Black and Brown community, is doing decolonizing work. And believe me, I know it's hard. I mean, when Patty Byrne and me and Stacey Milburn and Mia Mingus, came up with disability justice, we tried to get it in the Black and Brown community. But because of Black ableism, it was painful. I mean, it was really, really painful. So it's like, okay, we tried, let's open it up to everybody. I think that's why you see now disability justice is everywhere except the Black and Brown community. That's why you can see the recent thing that happened to,
The BAFTAs.
yeah, Baptists.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's going to continue to happen if we don't deal with Black ableism in our own community, so we can come home and do that education.
Hmm.
And it's not only, because a BAFTA or something happening. It's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't think that that who really that funders who don't want to fund it, because it's revolutionary, it's really going down to the deep, and it really it's really threatening to the system, you know.
You mentioned that your father was in the Black Panther Party, and I know that the Black Panthers were actually disability justice was part of their platform as well. It was something that they were very involved in, and obviously the Black Panther Party it exists in some forms now, but the government murdered most of the leadership because they were so good at connecting that intersectionality of struggle. And reading about how including their disabled comrades was a big part of the Black Panther project, and seeing as how now a lot of those things, the different struggles that we all have for various reasons, are very siloed into this individualism. And that quote that I read a little while ago about the Eurocentric models of disability focusing on
Yeah,
individualism, productivity, and medicalization, right?
yeah,
This like pathologization of people's problems that are actually a lot more structural than just an individual person. It's because of the way that we as a society treats people that might need mobility aids or whatever it is. We treat it as this person needs this thing, not as we all need to support, because everybody will become disabled at some point in their lives. And it's real easy for young and able-bodied people to not think about that until all of a sudden they're older, and something happens or their bodies start to fail for whatever reason, and they fought against setting these things up their whole lives, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's funny because I'm here doing, my PhD, and I'm a TA in the new disability studies program, here at UCLA. I've been TAing in that program for the last year and a half. And I realized even in disability studies, rest in peace, Christopher Bell, that 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 wrote one of the first academic articles saying that disability studies is white disability studies. And, it came out, I think it came out in the 90s. But, I'm seeing, and even today, that it's only two models of disability that we study, the social model and the medical model. But there's so many other models. There's this African model that deals with the family, that deals with the community. There's this indigenous model that, and so it's just interesting that even academia is not open to different models of seeing disability. So if academia is not open to it, where is that gonna, where's that teaching is gonna happen?
Right.
Once again, that's why the Krip-Hop Institute is so. I miss the days where you could go to the YMCA and get real physical education. It's like, where is it now? It's definitely not in the universities because they're very liberal. They're not radical. So you're not really getting the radical education that you need to really live in these systems.
Everything's been paywalled and
Yeah,
restricted and locked away from us. Yeah,
yeah.
very much so. Um, I'd like to touch just a little bit more on this history of disability in the music and the arts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you specifically mentioned a few artists. You already talked about Frantz Fanon. But you also mentioned Frida Kahlo. You know, she was very disabled towards the rest of her life. Her whole life, actually. She had like polio as a child,
Oh,
and then ended up breaking her back.
yeah.
Curtis Mayfield and Jay Dilla as well, all were like making art from their beds. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, I did a video a couple days ago about that. Making art, writing from bed, and it goes like to Frida Kahlo. Curtis Mayfield's last album is just genius. The New World Order. I mean, he made that from the bedroom. His bedroom was a studio. And, last night came and, dropped some tracks. And Ice-T came and dropped some tracks. And this all happened in his bedroom. Yeah. So it's cool, Jay Dilla made donuts from this hospital bed. Of course, from the salon, his last work was all made from his bed. People don't talk about that. People don't talk about it. People don't talk about, especially when a person gets disabled, people, especially if you're black and brown and if you're in the limelight, you just disappear, and it happens over and over again. When Muhammad Ali became disabled, gone, yeah. I think the reason why he disappears is that there's no support. There's no activist group that really supports him. Because we have to build that. And that's gonna come outside of the four foundations, other foundations, like we have to do it. Like 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 we said earlier, radical radical formations are not funded. They never been funded. So we just have to really come on. And I think now we see it because of Donald Trump. We see it more and more, especially when ICE agents are attacking white women. Oh, we see it like, oh, the gloves are on. But I'm wondering, we see it, I'm wondering the next step is to come home and do the work. It's like, okay, I'm gonna leave my federal job and come home and do the work and support Krip-Hop and support other on the ground poor magazine on the ground stuff that's happening because those are the stuff that continues to grow.
Hmm.
Other stuff that we do a hashtag and we see on Instagram, those things come and go.
Hmm.
But on the ground stuff, always stays.
I agree with that. Did you want to touch? It's something you've mentioned a couple of times, and I wanted to just get you to elaborate a little bit on
Yeah.
this idea of the difference between disability rights and disability justice. And those
And
are distinctly different things, but I think colloquially they get mixed up a little bit.
yeah, they get mixed up because people want to mix it up. People want to mix it up. So disability rights, it deals with the laws, ADA, 504, you know, um, IDEA, disability rights is, um, leaders like Judy Human that passed away, were mostly all people. You know. So this is where I go for the civil rights. This is where the civil rights. This way justice says that we don't live in a courtroom. We
Hmm.
live outside of the court. So this way justice is right, is what we live. And it started on just say it started with people of color. And it didn't start with, like wealthy women. But it started with people of color, knowing that both communities needed that education. So disability justice, which is hard to say, it's hard to see now, is that, and I don't want to say it, but it's almost dead because, like all other movements, it's been co-opted. Being co-opted by foundations, they've been co-opted by, just say, white women that have power. It's been co-opted by politicians. When 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 Joe Biden, it's so funny. When Joe Biden was running for his second term, I guess he woke up. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna fully fund IDEA," and disabled activist did his disability platform, and I was like, "Are you serious, Joe Biden?" Because he was in office when IDEA, Individual Disability Education Act, passed in '75. And I know this doesn't cover disability justice, but it's really important, especially now with the attack on education. And I keep on saying that IDEA was never fully funded. So if you don't fully fund something, how can you implement it?
Mm-hmm.
So and that happened with two parties. Not only Republicans, happened with two parties. So no wonder Donald Trump can come over and say, "I'm going to destroy it." Democrats gave him the match to do it for
Right.
years.
Set them up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So disability justice says, okay, yes, we have disability rights. We see you, but we also need disability justice outside the courtroom. We need activist groups to follow, the 10 principles. And the thing about the 10 principles, people always say the 10 principles, but how do you implement them?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. How do you implement it? And that takes one-on-one, it takes hand-holding, it takes really political education.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to come from a university.
Um,
It's going to come from on the ground, doing it.
mm-hmm.
We saw when Malcolm X Grassroots Center in New York was doing police brutality activism way before Black Lives Matter, way before that. So that's the kind of institution that I want the Krip-Hop Institute to be like the Malcolm X Grassroots Center.
Very cool.
You know.
Awesome. I wanted to talk a little bit about your other. You have many
Mhm.
advocacy groups, many projects. I want to talk about Sins Invalid. This was founded in 2005 by you and Patricia Byrne,
Yeah.
and she described it as a hybrid between a community-based organization and a performance. So this is I was reading about it. I didn't find any videos of the performances. But I did read that there was a lot of eroticism involved. Like it's a very sexy performance. And this idea of disabled bodies being erotic and sexy as like a form of liberation,
Yeah.
which is amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about that organization?
Yeah, so me and Patty Byrne, go back to the beginning. We were really good friends, and we were at this performance. Um, flamingo dancing was one that I used at Berkeley. It's one of the Pena Cultural Center, and it was so beautiful. And me and Patty, we were both artists, authors, and we looked at each other like, there's no black, brown, people of color with disabilities doing performance work with a political lens to it. And we just like boom. And after that we just like, okay, Sins Invalid. Yeah, me and Patty, because we were activists and artists, like Paul Robeson. We saw ourselves not only just art for art's sake. We saw the art as political. And Patty used to say that, I could talk to Congress all day and every day, but performance with politics and art that's beautiful stays with you forever. And that was so true. Our first performance, people in the crowd like, wow, we never saw it. So yeah, so Sins Invalid, you know, began with me, Patty Brown, Todd Herman, and his wife at the time. And it just grew, people, especially people of color, people that queer, just like fell in love because they never saw that before, especially with politics. Because, like I said, me and Patty were activists first. You know, we wanted to do Sins and Valid with activists. So, yeah, feel like that.
That's very cool. I read that there's a traveling show as well. Is that still happening? Like, do y'all or the performers, the artists that are active in it, do they travel around the nation?
I think so. I left Sins about like about God 6, 7 years ago.
Okay,
So I think I did around Krip-Hop and also to tell you the truth, and I love Sins Invalid, but I wanted to do the hard work that we couldn't do
mm-hmm.
because of black people.
Mm.
And I wanted to get really deep into the black and brown community around disability justice. And at the time that that angle had no grant funding. So, being a radical like me, I was like, fuck grant writing, and we're just gonna fucking do it. So yeah, so I left Sims, yeah, like 7 years ago to do that and to do hip hop, but they're still going on. Like I said, Paper passed away a couple years ago, but they're still kicking butt.
Very cool. I'll encourage people to look into that and see if they can see a live performance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They definitely go on college campuses, and now you got Zoom, so it's easier to do.
That's true. Yeah, you just watch it online.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so you are also a member of the National Black Disability Coalition, and the goals of that organization are to promote unity among Black disabled people, our families, and our communities, advance equity within the disability movement and our communities, and to foster opportunity for Black disabled people. Will you talk a little bit about that organization?
Yeah, so Jane Dunham, you shout out to her. She's a mother with a daughter with CP. She's founder of the National Black Disability Coalition. Yeah, they do great work. I'm not involved in it more because my studies and stuff. when I was involved in it, one of the biggest things that we tried to do at the time was to introduce Black disability studies, and we had four to try to talk about Black disability history, the culture, and stuff like that. And this was like in the early 2000s. So, yeah, yeah. But yeah, they're still around. They still take part. They do a lot of prison work. Yeah, and then the reform.
More abolition. You're more on the abolition side of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I hear people that want to put police reform, I was like,
It always ends up being an excuse to give them more
more
funding.
money. Yeah, right?
Yes.
It's like, people, and I want to talk about that. That's one reason I was never down with Black Lives Matter. Never down. Because I saw in the beginning, they were for police training.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, are you serious?
Right.
Activists like me, Poor Magazine, and all these people, like, no, we've been here before. It's not about police training at all.
No, we know what police training looks like. It's not what we want. Yeah.
It's just sad to see that
Mm-hmm.
humans come and go, and it's almost the same cycle. Like, you know, I grew up watching, rest in peace. I grew up watching Jesse Jackson, come to rallies and take over media, take over, messaging. It's all about Jesse Jackson. The same thing happened with Dan Jones. It's like, I
Mm.
used to protest with you in Oakland, dude. What are you talking about? So it's the same cycle that I don't know why we keep on getting with the same cycle. I guess because the cycle comes with money and resources. So under a capitalist system, of course, you're gonna go toward that because that's where the money and the power is. But
Mm-hmm.
it is still the same cycle from Al Sharpton to Jesse Jackson to the Black Lives Matter. It's the same cycle. Oh, it just irks me.
Yeah. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about Poor Magazine, which
Yes,
is a poor people led, indigenous people led grassroots
yes.
nonprofit art organization dedicated to providing revolutionary media access, art, education, and advocacy to silenced adults, youth, elders in poverty across Mother Earth, which is a beautiful description of themselves. I hadn't really known much about Poor Magazine
Oh my
before I
God.
started reading about you. Yeah, which, it's like one of those things that is just like kept from people, right? Like these beautiful things that do exist, but you have to search them out still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Poor Magazine is my family. I've been with Poor Magazine since what, 98, I think.
Wow. Okay. A
That,
long time. Yeah.
yeah. I started, and matter of fact, it's so, like I said, it's so interesting that my life is a circle. Because I started with Poor Magazine, and one of the first articles I did on their website was the police killing of Margaret Mitchell here in LA. And Margaret Mitchell was a black woman with mental health disorders, was houseless, and the LAPD just came up with her and just like bang bang. So that was the first article I did, and it was called Ellen and Chillin'. So it was taking the name of mental, what people call mental illness, and really, giving it a hip hop twist. So we call it ill and chillin'. And that was my column. I think it's one of the first columns on race and disability back in the 90s. Well, yeah, Poor Magazine, I mean, from that point of a small, group from San Francisco before the dot-com boom, and now they have homefulness, which homefulness to be everywhere. Oh my God, it's wonderful. They teach people with wealth and education privilege to really give back their privilege to people that's doing work on the ground. So because of that teaching, ongoing teaching for years and years, Pulp Magazine has a solidarity board, and because of solidarity board, and because of tiny, say okay, it's in your hands to really learn what we're doing and take it to the next level. And, Tiny Magazine always talks about homefulness, where, where a place where poor people can make their home, where we don't have to pay this lie of rent, because rent is a freaking lie. Yeah.
Mhm.
And now homelessness is a reality. There's two homeless in East Oakland. Poor Magazine trying to get the homeless here in LA. We are talking to people in Seattle, and homelessness is coming from the people. It's not a politician and whatever. It's coming from the people for the people. And the first one in East Oakland has a school, has a radio station which I do my radio program every month. They serve people food way before COVID. Four Magazine's been doing that for the last 20 years or so. Taking it from the Black Panther. You know, so and one of the movies Francis Moore is a Black Panther. So we stand on those teachings. Panther from Rome, Philadelphia. Those are the teachings that we stand on. From indigenous people. So Book Magazine is trying to spread this homefulness. Not exactly just um, another homefulness spot in San Francisco, which is kind of interesting because me and Tiny was gentrified out of San Francisco, back in the late 90s and 2000s. San Francisco now is a dot-com, home. It's so sad how the dot-com and the mayor just totally messed up San Francisco. But now we have a new spot in San Francisco. So we're gonna bring on homelessness there too. So yeah, Poor Magazine does a lot. I guess they do homelessness, they do a radio show, they do a school, they book productions. They um, publish my series of hip hop graphic novels. So,
Very cool.
um, but anyone who can online it's like it's the the Krip-Hop elders are getting older, so we passed on torch to Roxanne, and Roxanne found out that the government
Mm-hmm.
that the government behind the Krip-Hop Institute. So Roxanne is coming back home and trying to free us because we got sentenced to a group home, to a nursing home. So Roxanne is trying to free us.
That's exciting. Did you have anything else about your personal art, music, poetry, writing that you wanted to discuss before we move on?
Um, um, I see me as a we. I see a lot of disabled blogs and disabled consciousness only deals with an high story.
Hmm.
And I, you know, I see display as an international global movement, global culture, global reality. Um, one thing that we're doing, that we just started doing, is Black men of disability. So there's a couple of similar Africa from Zimbabwe, myself, and we have a DJ that just did a mix for me. Because he does mixes. He's a DJ, but he does mixes with his beat because it's this way he can't use his arms. So he mixes with his feet. Oh my God, his music is slamming. His music is so slamming. So we're currently getting as black disabled black men with disability, and we're gonna do some online stuff. We're gonna go to South Africa and do some stuff. So that project is coming up. Like I said, I'm still working on the uh, last comic book. But to tell you the truth, everything is my dissertation right now. Everything is on my dissertation. I'm trying to get that done. Trying to get the hell out of academia.
Totally
I,
fair.
I swear to God, yeah, I'm not made for academia.
And yet you keep going back.
No, this is the last time. PhD, I'm done. Yeah.
So close. You're so close. Before we finish up here, I did want to get into this, and this has kind of been the overarching discussion here. But you know the intersection of struggle, right? And earlier you had mentioned the quote unquote BAFTA incident that happened about a week ago, where Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were on stage presenting, and there was a man in the audience named John Davidson who has Tourette's. And you know, I think the more that has come out, it really does seem like BAFTA and the BBC are the people who are the most at fault here for, you know, putting a microphone so close to John Davidson, knowing that his tics included slurs, but, you know, they still chose to air him, you know, loudly saying the N-word while these two black men were presenting, and it ignited some really terrible discourse online, where people really siloed themselves into, you know, I support black people, not disabled people, or I support disabled people, not black people, rather than understanding the intersectionality of all of this. And so I just wanted to hear your opinions on this, your take on it, and like what you think the important takeaways of this are.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that question. You know, the my takeaway is like, what are we going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happened, and yeah, it was a white disabled man and blah blah blah. What are we going to do now except post about it?
Right.
And that's my thing. My thing is like, I I I did this video. I was like, just wondering if the U.S. had a blackout, what 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 would we do? Can we come back to underground activism? Because that with hip hop, because we deal with artists from around the world, I had to deal with that. You
Mm.
know, our artists in Africa or Spain don't have good Wi-Fi. So organizing with them is going to take a lot longer than what we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing all this is like, yes, it happened, but what are we going to do about it offline? What are we going to do about it offline? How, like I said in the beginning, how can black disabled people come home? If we're not going to do that work, then a post or a video is good. It's education, but it doesn't do nothing once you turn off your computer. That's the work that people need to start doing. Yeah. Yes, it hurts. Yeah. And when I heard that, it's like, what? Yeah. So yes, it hurts. And yeah, the BBC should should lose a couple of $1 million for that.
For sure.
you know, and we said, get off of these social networks and come back to the community and to the work, so little Lisa and little Leroy with disabilities can go to a place where they see themselves, and not only see themselves, but see themselves in a radical way that Hollywood can't do, and that internet can't do, because we don't control it. I mean, I got off of Twitter like about 2 years ago. I was like, I can't, I can't be on a place where the person's roots is tied to South Africa apartheid. You know, I mean, what's his face? Don't don't even say his name. But his parents were were for apartheid.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. We don't have to say his
Yeah,
name.
please.
Yeah.
He owns Twitter now. I think I can't be on a social platform again.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, I think that's a brilliant takeaway is that like just take it back to the community because that's where the healing happens and that's where the work
Yeah.
happens. Yeah, wonderful. So the last couple of things, I do want to end on a positive note, but we're gonna go to a worse place real quick first. Just with the current state of the struggle. And, since I first started talking to you a week ago, getting ready for this,
Yeah.
the U.S. has, jumped itself into, knee deep into a war. Again, we are bombing people in the Middle East.
The thing about that, and I always try to correct people, is that the U.S. is not at war. The U.S. is looking at war.
Mm,
911, when those two twin towers came down,
mm-hmm.
we got a taste of what
Right.
be at war
Yeah.
really feels like.
That's
But
a good point. We are bringing war to other people, but it has yet to come home. It will eventually.
yeah,
And this idea of the imperial boomerang, it always will come back home to roost for sure. But aside from that, I think we probably both agree that we very much live under a white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal society. Very much, very oppressive to the vast majority of people. And I agree a lot with the George Jackson school of thought in that fascism has always been here, and it just presents itself in different ways to different communities and kind of ebbs and flows over the years. But I think a lot of specifically white middle income people are finally starting to see that, as it is finally starting to affect them as well. So as fascism continues to grow here, fascists always come for disabled people very early on. They are a community that the fascists love to at least hide, if not outright attack violently. So I wanted to ask you, how can people protect themselves, and how can able-bodied people or people that have race or gender privilege in our society, how can they protect their comrades in this increasing oppressive time that we live under?
I think you're doing it right now. You're having me on. I, I have to say, since uh, since taking Frantz Fanon's theory about decolonizing and integration, my 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 um my electric gigs had went down so much, so
Mm-hmm.
much that this is so it's so blatant,
Mm-hmm.
that once again this country doesn't deal with radicals at all. If you become a radical, you're just on. So really, what can people do is what you're doing right now. Also, people can come back home and support local work that never gets on Fox News, but keep on working. For Magazine, I've talked about them. They're doing excellent work with no money.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. We have to realize that activism is not a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not a 9 to 5, and it's not you're not gonna get an Emmy for it.
Right.
And also you might not see uh the wealth of it. It might be for the next generation. That's why I keep on saying to my work. This work is for little Leroys that gonna come around and say, "Oh my God, it's a Krip-Hop Institute. Oh my God, you know, um, Krip-Hop was at UCLA." It's so interesting that I'm doing like black radical thinkers, but my department wants to concentrate on intersectionality. That's like what Fred Hampton was doing intersectionality on the ground way before it became an academic thing. So what are you guys talking about? But like I said, like always, it's universities are not radical. They're very liberal. So
Mm-hmm.
so what people could do is come back home and really support the people that don't get the bling bling. You know.
Yeah. That's the idea of coming back home. I think that's really well said, and I think anybody can understand that. Like come back home. That's where things happen.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
my dad, like, he did activism, he did his part-time job, he was doing all kinds of stuff. It's like, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I wanted to end on a positive note, although I think that was a positive note already. That was beautifully said. But I wanted to ask you if there is a specific quote from a revolutionary or anybody, or a poem or something that you like to come back around to, something that you find really positive and uplifting that can help you when things do feel overwhelming.
Yeah, like I said, this PhD thing, going through black radical thinkers, and at that time they didn't have disability as a mindset, where you could tell from their readings, that disability was there. Cedric Roberson's book, Black Movements, he talks about Harriet Tubman, of course. Harriet Tubman had disability. He talked about this person that I had interviewed, um Elias Hill, and come to find out that Elias Hill, he was in the back of this church in North Carolina. I had a chance to interview the pastor, but Elias Hill, took the KKK to court back in the day as a black disabled man. I mean, that's what I'm telling that there's black disability radical tradition out there. It's like Cedric Rose, and it's like we have to go out and really discover it and bring it back and mix things up. But that what keeps me going, knowing that these people were out there way before me doing radical work, and never got the bling bling in their lifetime. Before Brad Romance, a lot, and when it comes to Black History Month or Display History Month, people put out the same names, which is good and okay, but you know, black disabled radical tradition goes a lot further back than Brad Lomax.
Hmm.
It's up to us to do that research, to do, Cedric Robertson said that the radical tradition goes further. It's up to people to do that work. Even Frans Fanon said that. It's up to the next generation to do that work. But once again, that work is not going to come with bling bling and grants and stuff, because it's radical work. I give some love to Black Liberation Media and Dr. Ball. That's them and the baby newspaper. So only Black media that continues to have me on and my work on. Other Black media, Jet Magazine or other liberal Black media, you don't have me on because I'm too radical. So we need those spaces like your space and Black Liberation Media. We need places like that. Core Magazine. Yeah, we need to continue to support those, and then continue to make more. So.
Very cool. Thank you for that. I will finish with this. You have a song that you sent me that we are going to close out with. So could you tell us a little bit about the song and then any other plugs that you want to put in? I will be putting links to all of to Krip-Hop Nation, to Poor Magazine, to the Sins Invalid, all of that stuff I will put links to. But if there's anything else you wanted to shout out, please do that.
Yeah, and once again, thank you again for doing this. Um, I going back to that song, Frantz Fanon. Oh my God! I keep on listening to his last book. His last book, he did embed people. We talked about that, but he talked about decolonizing. That book should be studied in the Black community. You know, and so the poem that you're gonna listen to, you know, comes from that. It's decolonizing disability, calling on Frantz Fanon. I wonder if Frantz Fanon was alive today. What do you say about Black disabled people in the academy? You know, so we need more thinking like that. I think this once again this inclusionary movement is it's an insult, and we should never ever fall for that. And France, it's like, how can we talk about inclusion from our colonizer? It just doesn't make sense. Well, yeah, I just want to say, it's time to decolonize our minds around disability because especially in the Black community, we still have the slave master's mind thinking around disability. And we have to also look at Dr. Joy McGrew, the girl, she does healing, talking about post-slave syndrome. We need to talk about that. And she really talked about healing. And I think in the Black community, especially around disability, we need to be open and we need to say, yeah, we're going to be hurt, but we need to get some healing. And healing only comes when you're open to tell the real truth about ableism in the Black community. So if you guys are open about that, then we can come to healing, and then we can do the decolonizing. It's a step to it. You just don't do decolonizing the first day. You gotta open the wounds, you gotta heal, then you gotta say, okay, let's do some decolonizing work.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Leroy.
Yeah,
I really appreciate this.
Calling Frantz Fanon. Calling Frantz Fanon. We need to decolonizing disability, ignoring Southern voices, always hearing Western noises, models of disability through white scholars, Black disability research matters through Black, brown, red perspectives, the Rutledge Handbook, post-colonial disability studies, more than intersectionality, getting down to the roots, deep moaning our blues. But we got each other, so we can't lose. Collecting imperial data, many experiences in multimedia, not one, but international authors. Shout out to poverty scholars. More than a dissertation, it's a Black Crip revolution. Soundtrack like Krip-Hop Nation, like Adol Duran wrote Healing the Soul Wound, introducing Grace Kelly's Indigenous Model of Disability, a reality, decolonizing disability, coming soon, sweeping white tears with a wet, dry broom, Afro-Crip, open our dictionary, Krip-Hop vocabulary, to the west, to the east, to down south. It's time to open our mouths or talk with our hands. You better understand we roll limp our way of taking a stand, adding to the Black radical tradition, behind inclusion. It's our liberation.